You also have a sublingual salad we have.
Will you do that one more time?
Parotid gland, submandibular, and there would be a sublingual, but it's not on here. So there's nothing to take a picture of because it's not indicated on the model. That's where you roll your tongue up. Sometimes you get saliva going, sublingual. All right, then you have teeth. I assume you'll be able to find teeth. Hold this, would you? And we have a tooth model in here.
Oh no.
Don't have this on campus. Ooh, a tooth. So you have the enamel covering the crown. Then you have dentin, which is all this yellow stuff here. And there's a cavity in it. This is a pulp cavity. Have blood vessels and nerves running through it. So you got various teeth. So we do have a tooth model. Tooth, tongue, you need to find that on a cat or a human. Hard palate, soft palate, you can find those on the cat. We did those with the respiratory. Uvula, that's just on a human, but that's that little soft fleshy bit hanging down the back of your soft palate. I just add it because I like the way it sounds. Vestibule, there's space right here where you kind of stick your food between your cheeks and your teeth there. I haven't touched a dead cat yet. Pharynx, we know, nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. Tonsils, we've already done, right? Palatine, lingual, pharyngeal tonsils. Esophagus, we'll find on the cat. Parts of the small intestine, number 21. Now the small intestine, you can find that on the human models, you can find it on the cat, but the small intestine has three regions. The duodenum is first, closest to the stomach, then the jejunum, then the ileum. You won't know the landmarks on the cat. I don't know the landmarks on the cat, so I don't care that you can tell me where the duodenum ends and the jejunum starts, where the jejunum ends and the ileum starts, but if I put a pin in the small intestine right next to the stomach, that's the duodenum. In a human, it would be about the first 12 inches or so. Or if I have a pin in the small intestine just before it goes into the colon, well, in the human, the last 11 feet is ileum. So if it's in the small intestine right next to the large intestine, it's the ileum. If it's just randomly in the middle, and on the models, it's just, of course, a plastic mass in there, that's just small intestine. What else? Duodenal papillae. That you can actually find in the cat, but it's so tiny I'll never ask it on the cat. And I don't know if I can ask it in here because I don't see any digestive pieces. Go this way. Well, it's not great. This is the duodenum, first part of the small intestine. Notice they've cut a piece of it open. There's a little window in there. There's usually a little finger-like projection or bump with a hole in it. That is the duodenal papillae. That's where the bile ducts come in from the liver. Pancreatic ducts, which are right here, come out of the pancreas, and they drain into the small intestine right there. So that would be the duodenal papillae. This is the only model you have it on, it looks like.
Point to the duodenum again, where it should
It's this part of the small intestine.
Okay. I didn't get to do it
All right, the rest, let's look at it this way. Liver model. A bit of this, right? What's this right here?
Inferior vena cava?
Yeah, and then
Oh,
portal
that's
vein,
portal
hepatic
vein.
artery, hepatic vein. So we've already done those. Now on this one, you have to know the lobes of the liver now. Just in a human, the cat's liver has a lot of lobes, but they're different. So this goes in like this. It's not quite to scale, but this big side of the liver here, this is the right lobe. It's on the right side. This smaller one over here on the left, guess what it's called? Left lobe. Then you got this little square piece right here. That's the quadrate lobe. And then you got this little tail-like bit hanging out by the vena cava. That's the caudate lobe. So know the lobes of the liver. Right, left, quadrate, caudate. Then the only other thing you need on here, this big green bag-like structure, is a gallbladder. It has a duct coming out of it. Right there, that's the cystic duct. Then there's a bunch of these green bile-filled ducts coming out of the liver. These are hepatic ducts. The liver, as we'll see in lecture, creates bile, and bile flows out these hepatic ducts. Bile can flow out the cystic duct. Then the hepatic duct and the cystic duct, they come together. Where it's been cut, that's a common bile duct. That would go from here all the way to the small intestine. So the cut area there is common bile duct, cystic duct, hepatic duct, gallbladder. Shoot. That way again.
I can see everything.
Oh, no autographs.
Oh, really? Just don't stay on your tippy toes.
All right.
Ow.
The colon, large intestine or colon. In a cat, it's just large intestine because it looks a little different. Cats are pretty carnivorous. But in a human, you've got the small intestine comes in here. This is the last part of the small intestine. That would be the ileum. And then the large intestine kind of goes up like this, over, down. there are different names for the different regions of the large intestine. Where it's going up,
Ascending.
contents would be going up. It's the ascending colon where it goes transverse, and where it goes down.
Descending.
And then where it kind of wiggles around here,
Sigmoid.
sigmoid colon, and then the rectum. So you got ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum. Darn near killed them. So those are the parts of the colon. Then where the small intestine comes in, there's a little valve right here. You'll be able to find this on the cat as well. Kind of allows material to go from the small intestine to the large intestine, but not go backwards. That's kind of the ileocecal valve. It's got a little one-way valve between the small and large intestine. And then, so the ascending colon's here, but then you have this dead-end bag off this direction. That's the cecum. Cat will have one as well. And hanging off the end of the cecum, particularly in humans, is this little
Is that your appendix?
worm-like thing, which is the appendix. Apparently the cats have one too, but it's not obvious on the cat, so you won't see it on the cat. So that's the appendix, which is really a non-functional bit of the cecum. So cecum, appendix, parts of the colon.
I read that in caveman days that the appendix was used because you would eat and twigs and pieces of bark would get caught
Well,
in that.
no one really knows for sure.
Right.
Because, of course, we don't have dead cavemen with soft parts. All we got are their bones, and those appendices don't fossilize very well. One sort of hypothesis is, and the evidence comes from comparing different animals, right? So I've already got all the rest of the junk up here. We did that with respiratory, so I'll just cut off the esophagus, which is really kind of a bummer. I wanted it all connected still, because the esophagus would go here. Anyone have some safety pins? Regular pins? Here, I'll just pin it together with a straight pin. It's just like surgery.
Can you see?
Yes, I can see.
On that 10%
I was at 20 when we first started.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there's a pin of kava. So let's just take this whole mess out of here. I think
And
that
he
would-
was upset because our esophagus was not Is this how it's going to be on the practical? All
Some.
disconnected?
No, I want the rest of you to keep your cats intact. Slide that out of my way. Watch that.
You just gonna throw it on the table?
Yeah, you guys have to clean it up anyway.
Well, that's someone's paper.
Eviscerating
It
cat.
was Sawyer's. It's not anymore.
It didn't get on there. It didn't touch it.
No, his glove did though.
No.
Colon, large intestine. All right, so the esophagus comes down. Here's your diaphragm, liver. We go through the diaphragm, and here is the stomach. Where the esophagus goes in with stomach, there's a valve right here. It's a sphincter type valve, kind of a purse string type valve. If I put a pin there and ask you for sort of in quotes valve, what are you going to tell me? That is the esophageal valve or cardiac valve. And then you have the stomach with different regions. The fundus bulges out here. Here's the main body of the stomach. And this muscular downstream end, that's the pyloric region. And there's another sphincter, acts as a metering valve. It's between the stomach and the small intestine here, so it's right about there. That one's called the pyloric sphincter. That's like a metering valve. Then attached to the greater curvature of the stomach, which is you got a greater curvature here, lesser curvature here. Attached to the greater curvature is this big sheet of,
Mesentery.
well, it's fat. This is the greater omentum. It's all made out of that serous membrane that goes back and
That's what I meant
forth.
to
But that is the greater omentum. Goes from the greater curvature of the stomach, spreads out, covers the abdominal organs. Then, going from the stomach to the liver, the lesser curvature of the liver, it's kind of torn up. It's very delicate. This is the lesser omentum. Is attached to the lesser curvature. Then, if you flip all this upside down, you got a spleen here. It's a lymphatic organ. Lift it over. Here's a pancreas. Kind of runs behind the stomach and down the small intestine. Can you see it there? It kind of looks like pale hamburger meat. That's the pancreas. So it's pretty long in the cat. It's behind the stomach here. See, there's a greater omentum in the stomach. There's the pancreas, and then it runs down the small intestine a bit. Then you got, of course, if I ask you what part of the, to identify this right here, what would you call it? It's small intestine, but what part? Duodenum, because it's very close to the stomach. Then, of course, what was holding all the intestines together? Those are your mesenteries that I cut to straighten it out. So it's intestine, intestine, intestine. This is all small intestine. Until you get to this fatter one. This is large intestine. It's larger in diameter. So that's the ileum right there. Goes into the large intestine there. And if I cut into the large intestine right here, there's a dull probe. Can you toss me that dull probe?
Ew.
Yeah, you got a little bit of old stuff in here. But
No.
there's a little hole right here. Can you see that little hole? That's where the ileum goes in. That, I'm putting that right through the ileocecal valve right there. So that's the ileocecal valve. Now, if you want, I do give bonus points. If you go through all this intestine, if you find some parasitic worms, I'll give you 1 extra point per phylum. There's 2 phyla of worms. You can find Platyhelminthes worms, which are tapeworms, the cestodes, or you can find nematode worms, which are the roundworms. See, I don't have them here because I don't ever work in this lab, but I've got a whole jar filled with parasitic worms that have come out of the lab cats. They're sometimes filled with them.
No.
1 point per phylum, so you could get 2 points.
Not
Yeah.
even worth it.
It should be like 1 point per worm.
No,
No, I'm not digging through cat for worms.
you don't have to.
What if it was 5? If it was 5, I would dig through all of them.
It's just one. It's just
I'll think
one.
about it.
Yeah, yeah, and you're going to be at that 89.2, and you're going to wish you had that 1 worm point.
I'm finding worms.
Yeah, we're gonna
Put
cut
'em
them
on
off.
some jars.
Okay, here's your liver.
Stick it in your pocket.
There, that thing right there. It's kind of hidden a bit in the cat. That's your gallbladder.
Where?
Right there, that big bag.
It's kind of
Okay.
green.
Sometimes it's very green, not always though, so be a little careful, but it's kind of hidden in the lobes of the liver of the cat. Gallbladder, which would be the cystic duct coming out. You really can't see the other ducts too well. Hepatic duct, I think, is coming out here. But that's cystic duct and gallbladder. Lobes of the liver, we don't need to identify them on the cat. Diaphragm, what else?
Turn that paper over.
Here.
Stomach we did, esophagus we did, pharyngeal tonsils we don't do on a cat. Pharynx you can do, and vestibule, that's on the cat further up. It's also respiratory, hard palate, soft palate, tongue, teeth. Pyloric region we did, fundus, body. Oh, rugae of the stomach.
Ooh, that's
Hold
when
on,
you open this.
Stop recording.
Yeah, because, of course, the stomach, like in a human, it might hold half a liter when it's empty, but it can hold up to 2, maybe even in some people up to 4 liters. It can expand tremendously. When it expands, you don't want it to tear. So the mucosa on the inside of the stomach, and these are already kind of full, so you may not see them too easily. But see how it's got kind of these accordion-like folds? Those are just called rugae. It allows the mucosa to expand as the stomach expands. So those are the rugae.
Checking his hair, apparently.
Just seeing if there's any worms in there. Sometimes they're in the stomach too. But
It's
They're not
Mine.
still alive, are they?
no.
Okay.
So we got stomach, rugae of the stomach, greater, lesser curvature we did, greater mentor, lesser mentor, esophageal valve, pyloric sphincter, the small intestine, ileocecal valve we did, pancreas we did, liver, gallbladder, villi. You can't really, I won't point to villi on the exam because, I can't get a pointer in them or anything, but we'll talk about them a bit in lecture. If I open up these small intestine and you look inside it, the inside surface, the mucosal surface, if you look at it, see how it kind of looks like suede leather? Mm-hmm. That's because there's all these, they're not quite microscopic, but there are these little villi sticking up, the little finger-like projections to increase the surface area of the intestines. So that's villi. Again, you can see them on the microscope slides we'll look at next time. You can see them in there, but I can't really point to them. Appendix, cat doesn't have one. Mesenteries we did. Yeah, that's it. It's a piece of cake. Clean up this table. It's a mess.